The Doctor and Romana had recently nearly crashed again, only to discover they were in a city on Earth. Or were they? Then the sun imploded, killing everyone, including them. Fortunately, they awoke in the bed and breakfast and found that everyone else was back from the dead too. But K9 and the TARDIS were gone. And there were new visitors, a group of scavengers named the Horde who were willing to kill anyone and everyone in order to find a data port. Romana had encountered them only to be interrupted by a 7-foot-tall blue man hovering above the ground. Sergeant Gabber of the Horde had tried to kill him, but he slaughtered her troops instead. In the confusion, Romana and Gabber found themselves in an alley, trapped by the blue man. Just your average Thursday. As for the Doctor, he had met Emilio and his autistic son Juan in their home, only to become trapped by the Horde, who were looking for a hard drive that Emilio had hidden. Their leader, Captain Tobin, had ordered his troops to shoot the Doctor, and they did. Upon consideration, perhaps more to get the hang of than an average Thursday. In the alley, the blue man was interrogating Romana and Gabber. He seemed to believe they had caused the sun to implode.
The implosion of the sun had nothing to do with me, and I'm not with this soldier.
The blue man appeared to accept this answer and turned his attention to Gabber.
I am unaware of any solar event that you are referring to,
Gabber said, but the authority she had carried in her voice had gone.
I demand that you release me and...
Your demands are rejected,
the blue man replied over her, as calmly as ever.
Therefore...
From the far end of the alley, they heard a shouted command.
Open fire!
Romana and Gabber threw themselves onto the ground as shots flew overhead. The blue man turned towards the soldiers.
Cease firing!
Gabber shouted, but no one heard her. One by one, the soldiers' weapons began to explode.
Pull back!
Gabber shouted futilely. But the blue man kept advancing towards her troops, who kept firing and dying.
There's nothing you can do,
Romana cried, standing and pulling Gabber to her feet and dragging her back towards the street. Gabber tried to resist Romana at first, but seeing most of her troops dead, she turned and ran. Inside the house, Emilio could not believe his eyes. The Doctor had been shot by an energy weapon and collapsed onto the floor. But suddenly the Doctor sat up, his teeth gritted. He held his cranium in his hands and moaned,
"Oh, my head!"
Everyone froze. Then Emilio said,
"You're alive!" "Yes." Banged my head trying to duck out of the way, but for no good reason, it seems. Those disruptors were set at quarter strength. That couldn't kill anyone.
But...
Corporal Sharp stammered.
He can't be alive. We zeroed him out.
Unless he's...
A ghost.
Suddenly the soldiers began pushing each other out of the way in order to be the first to escape the room. Someone was yelling to use a grenade when Captain Tobin fired a shot into the ceiling. Emilio pulled Juan down towards the floor. Everyone else froze.
"He's not a ghost,"
Tobin shouted.
"And even if he were, how would a grenade help?"
Sir!
The soldiers replied sheepishly.
"He's no ghost, but he might be one of them." "Which them do you mean, Captain?" the Doctor asked. Before Tobin could answer, a loud ominous hum began from something outside. A voice said,
All belligerents will leave the house and address me. I am Sysadmin 2, representative of the Guild of Sysadmins, and I am in the garden. If you do not comply, I will destroy this area.
"Goodbye, Madonna Lilies." "Corporal Sharp, eyes on!"
Sharp ran to a window and looked out. What he saw terrified him.
I've never seen anything like him before. 7 foot tall, blue, and hovering off the ground.
Tobin turned to the Doctor.
"If that's a sysadmin, then who are you?"
I'm the Doctor. I'm not with the sysadmins, whoever they may be. My concern is with Emilio and Juan. Those are the names of your other 2 hostages, you know.
"Corporal Sharp, guard these prisoners while I address Sysadmin 2. Company, weapons on full. Move out, keep quiet, and stay under cover.
Without making a sound, the soldiers moved towards the rear of the house, slipped out of the windows, and began working their way towards the front. Sharp stood before the doctor, Emilio, and Juan. He looked nervous as he ratcheted his energy weapon and pointed it at the doctor. Romana and Sergeant Gabba had run about a mile from the bed and breakfast and found themselves down a side street. Romana was out of breath, but Gabba was only slightly winded.
How far can I trust you?
Romana, and how far can I trust you, Sergeant Gabba?
Gabba did not answer for a moment. Instead, she looked around for any sign of attack. Finally, she said,
My entire company was wiped out.
Perhaps some are prisoners.
Maybe. We need shelter.
We need to find the doctor.
Who?
He can help.
Tell me more.
An expert on everything, according to him.
Even computers?
Of course.
He may prove a valuable asset.
I'm sorry.
Where is he?
The last I heard, he was on his way to the observatory.
Roger that. I'll find a car.
You can't just steal someone's car.
Do you want to live through the day?
Obviously. As do the people you shoot.
As do we all. It's them or us.
And you really believe that?
I can see by your hands that you don't work, and by your waistline that you eat plenty.
Nonetheless, I'm healthy for a Time Lord my age.
You have that choice then. It's different when you have to kill someone to take their food so you won't starve.
Is that what you've had to do?
All of us. All of the Horde.
The Horde? Is that what you call yourselves?
It's what we're called. As good as any other name, I guess. I'll get that car.
No, wait. Some of the customers at the bed and breakfast said the trolley was free today. Less conspicuous than having the police after us, right?
Gabba sighed and rubbed her eyes with her hand.
All right, but we'll keep moving until it arrives.
They began walking towards the hill. The sky had gone cloudy, and they could not see the observatory.
Can you locate the rest of your troops?
Don't have that tech. We only have what we can steal. Otherwise, we go without.
Gabba, what happened? How did you become the Horde?
Sysadmin 2 continued to hover a few inches above Emilio's garden, waiting patiently. After a moment, Captain Tobin stepped out of the house, walked down a few steps, and addressed him.
Identify yourself.
Sysadmin 2 said with the voice of a bureaucrat attempting to fill out the correct forms.
I am Captain Tobin of the Horde.
Sysadmin 2 cracked a smile.
Ah, the Horde. I have heard of you. Galactic scavengers. It is said that wherever a rubbish tip can be found, one can find your people.
Your opinion is not my concern, but it is important that you understand why we are here.
Acceptable.
We had a planet once.
Gabba told Romana as they continued down the street.
A war started with the embodiment of Gris. No one remembers how. About 150 years ago, it destroyed our world.
Only a small fraction of our people survived.
Tobin explained to Sysadmin 2.
We became fugitives in whatever ships we could find, but the embodiment decided to pursue the war to the finish.
No one would help us. No one dared. The embodiment is ruthless. We were slowly pushed to the edge of the galaxy, and the embodiment wouldn't give up.
We gained an advantage when we captured ships from Clom. For the first time, we were able to make contact with planets far outside the embodiment's reach. We found allies who told us about this place and how we could get in.
We came here seeking sanctuary. This is the one place where the embodiment will never find us.
Sysadmin 2, on behalf of the Horde, will you give us asylum?
Tobin asked. Inside Emilio's house, Sharp was only half watching his prisoners, half listening to what was being said outside.
Can you hear what they're saying?
Yes, very illuminating, the doctor whispered, smiling slowly.
What's going on? For once in my lives, I have no idea, but that doesn't mean we're helpless.
Then, speaking in a normal voice, the doctor addressed Sharp.
Corporal, maybe it would be best if I gave you the drive you were looking for.
You have it? Hand it over at once.
It's in a small case inside my pocket, and I'm taking it out slowly. There it is. But it would be best if you didn't open it just yet,
The doctor bawled, drowning out Amelia's words.
Do you really think I'd hand anything over to Captain Tobin without double-checking its contents?
Sharp said, opening the case. Inside there appeared to be nothing but dust.
What?
Sharp began. The doctor blew into the case, forcing the powder into Sharp's face. Sharp began coughing, sneezing, gagging and retching, almost all at the same time. He pointed his weapon at them blindly, but before he could get a shot off, Emilio punched him in the stomach. Sharp fell, and the doctor kicked the gun into a far corner. The doctor looked at the case and its fine powder lying on the floor.
The last of my datil pepper,
he said sadly.
Emilio, get the drive out of the computer quickly. Then we'll have to make our way back to the observatory. That's not possible. Juan never leaves the house. It's a symptom of his autism.
Outside in the garden, Sysadmin 2 stared quizzically at Captain Tobin.
You expect asylum from us after you hacked your way in, or rather, you had mercenaries from Tronlo hack their way in for you, causing untold damage to the metastructure, damage we are still attempting to catalogue and correct. Ah, now I see why the sun imploded. Cascading damage caused by your entry. That does not speak in your favour, and even if we were to forgive these infractions, and imagine that uninvited guests such as yourselves would settle down and behave as guests should, or to assume the embodiment of Gris hasn't followed you, fugitives with more firearms than common sense.
Perhaps I didn't make myself clear. The Horde number's over 100,000. Most are defenceless. We need a permanent settlement, or we will all die.
Yes, the embodiment of Gris has committed genocide before, and I dare say it will again, but that is no concern of the Guild, nor do we wish it to be. You are to remove all traces of your presence from this domain, or be hunted down.
Is that the Guild's final answer?
Sysadmin 2 sighed in mild annoyance and turned his head as if listening to something.
Yes,
He finally replied. The doctor looked at the window and turned back.
Emilio, have Juan sit down, please. Trust me.
Emilio nodded, then looked around for Sharp's weapon. He picked it up, made sure it was on quarter power, then stood guard near Sharp, who was still coughing miserably on the floor. The doctor slowly sat down next to Juan, who was looking worriedly about the room.
It's all right if you don't look at me. I understand.
The doctor told Juan. Juan gave him a sideways glance and then began looking around again.
First of all, I want you to know that you and your father will be all right, and that you'll have some chocolate when all of this is over. However, we must all leave before the Horde comes back, and to make it easier, I need you to let me touch your forehead with my index finger. It may feel a little odd, but it will allow us to get you somewhere safe.
4, 3, 2.
That's right. Close your eyes, Juan.
Juan closed his eyes.
1.
Juan said quietly under his breath.
0.
The doctor said, touching Juan's forehead with his index finger. Suddenly, the doctor felt himself flying or falling through space and time. Everything moved faster and faster until he approached the speed of light. How he knew that, he did not know. Then all the light in the universe flared at once, and just for a moment. On the horizon, he almost caught a glimpse of eternity.
If that's the Guild's final word, then I'm sorry.
no, you are not.
You're right. I'm not. Open fire!
Suddenly, 20 guns opened up on Sysadmin 2. When the doctor opened his eyes, he was sitting on the floor. Emilio was shaking him by the shoulders. Juan was still in his seat.
What happened to you? Incredible. In all my travels, No time for this. We have to move. Juan, Emilio, join hands. Let's go.
Before Emilio could object, Juan took his father's hand.
He'll be all right. No time to explain. Move.
They hurried out the back door as the sounds of gunfire grew louder out front. Romana and Gabba stepped off the trolley at the observatory, which was on fire. The roof of the west wing looked ready to collapse.
He said he'd meet you here?
Romana said nothing. Instead, she looked around and saw someone lying in the bushes to one side of the entrance.
Come on.
A woman lay on her back. Her name tag read, Dr. Matthews.
Can you move?
Help!
Dr. Matthews replied feebly. Then she stopped breathing. A moment later, her body disintegrated. Romana stood up and backed away with a short intake of breath.
What?
It's nothing.
Nothing?
She's been zeroed out. Now get inside.
She pointed a weapon at Romana and forced her to walk into the burning building. It only took a moment, but Sysadmin 2 had vanished from Emilio's garden.
Cease fire! Eyes on!
The soldiers stood and began a perimeter search. Within a minute, they'd reported back to Tobin.
No sign of the blue-skinned guy. Where did he go? His designation is Sysadmin 2. Identify your enemies, Private. Roger that, sir. Why do you think Sysadmin 2 took off like that? Was he hurt? Negative. All we did was annoy him. He'll show his face again when it suits him. Regroup with Corporal Sharp and his prisoners.
A soldier stepped out of the house.
Sharp's inside, wounded.
The prisoners have escaped. Give him a pain patch and a stimulant. We move out in 1 minute.
Sir!
Listen carefully. Our main objective is that hard drive. Do you understand?
Sir!
And no lethal tactics until it's in our hands.
Emilio drove the doctor and Juan to the observatory. Juan stayed in the car as the doctor and Emilio slowly stepped out and stared in awe at the building. The fire had almost burnt itself out.
What happened here? The walls are almost black from the energy discharge. I would have preferred it remained battleship grey. Should Juan stay here? There's more smoke than fire now. Best to bring him inside. Whoever did this might still be around.
They made their way carefully through the front doors. They could smell the smoke, but they could not see any. Suddenly they saw Romana at the other end of the room.
Romana!
Run!
But Gabba was already on their right, ready to shoot them if they ran.
Stand still and don't move. If you disobey my orders, I'll shoot.
Juan, get behind me. Don't shoot, please.
Gabba just laughed at him.
For pity's sake, just leave them alone.
What?
Does pity surprise you?
No, I just thought you knew what these things were.
Romana had known the doctor for several centuries, but she had never heard him speak as coldly as he did in that moment.
Perhaps you'd care to explain that remark, Sergeant.
Where exactly do you think you are? This isn't Earth. This isn't even a planet. This is a simulation of Earth. These people are just Sims. They don't even leave a ghost behind when they die.
Emilio had turned white.
What?
Gabba ignored Emilio and continued.
The Guild hosts the largest networked array in the universe, or at least that's their reputation. They're said to simulate everything down to the level of quarks. Those two, this father and son, aren't held together by quarks. They're held together by numbers.
No!
What are you crying for? You never go hungry. You never even age.
All right then. How did you get here?
A massive payment to the hackers of Tronlo.
That's it. The TARDIS must have slipped through the interface by accident once the hackers broke open the walls between our universe and this simulation. We were caught in the conversion field, which explains not only the bumpy landing, but also why we couldn't determine our location.
Then it's true?
I'm afraid so. I finally remembered where I'd heard of the sysadmin guild of the Golobus sector. It was during the 3 weeks I was stuck on Tronlo during the second hacker war against the League of...
No, it's not true! Juan is real!
The doctor touched his shoulder. This is a simulation, but I never said you weren't real.
What?
One.
What's he saying?
He's pointing to your pocket, Doctor.
The hard drive?
What hard drive?
The doctor took it out of his pocket and handed it to Juan. Here, take it.
No, stop! I order you to...
But Juan had already taken it and was holding it to his chest. Then the drive began to glow. Soon a bright light was illuminating Juan, and the doctor noticed that he was now hovering an inch above the floor.
Juan!
No, don't! Romana took a step forward toward Juan.
Stay back!
Settle down, Sergeant. Juan has connected himself to the hard drive.
What? By himself?
Indeed. Don't worry, your son is in his element right now. Literally. Suddenly the flames went out, the smoke cleared, and the computers in the building turned themselves back on. Juan looked up at his father and smiled. There, Sergeant. Quite the feat for someone who isn't real.
What did he just do?
Used the talents he was born with a little help from me, of course. The Horde were about 2 miles from Emilio's house. Then several of their instruments began to whine.
Massive energy reading being measured on all instruments, sir. Data ports across the city being reopened, re-energized and optimized, sir.
This is exactly what we needed. Platoon, spread out and triangulate. Once we have the location of a data port, we won't need that drive.
Doctor, what did you do to my son?
Emilio demanded. The doctor took him gently by the shoulders. Emilio, listen to me. All I did was unlock the potential he was born with. Accidentally, if you must know, we touched minds briefly, back at your home. It was the only way I could think of to make him comfortable enough to leave the house. And then I discovered that Juan may be the most amazing individual I have ever encountered in all of my travels.
Doctor, I think he's here.
What makes you think so?
Don't you hear it?
The doctor stopped talking and heard the hum.
How interesting.
A voice said behind and above them. They turned to see Sysadmin 2 floating near the roof of the building. Ah, yes. Sysadmin 2. Delighted to meet you at last.
I take it that you are responsible for re-energizing the data ports. How were you able to accomplish this feat when the guild was not?
Actually, I didn't. He did.
The boy? That's him?
That's my son you're talking about.
Be silent, or I will delete your ability to speak.
Emilio, let me handle this, the doctor said, gently pushing Emilio away from Sysadmin 2 and towards Juan. Romana looked at Gaba, who was staring wide-eyed at Sysadmin 2. She used this distraction to move slowly towards Emilio and Juan. Romana and I arrived in this simulation by accident. Upon encountering Emilio's son, Juan, I realized how exceptional he is.
He is only an aberration.
Could an aberration do what the entire guild could not? An aberration of this magnitude is far more likely to bring the whole system down than support it. You have greatly underestimated your creations. They have gone beyond mere if-then statements and are as real as you or I. Sysadmin 2 appeared to be listening to something. Finally he said,
I'm in constant contact with the guild, and while they reject your absurd claims, they accept that you and Romana arrived by error. Once we have regained full control to this simulation, we will perform a partial reboot and return you to the real universe.
A reboot?
Not without the guild's promise that these people will be left to live their lives in peace.
these sims have no life. They are merely a tool to model disasters.
Of course. Now I remember. Clients hire you to determine how certain planets will react to disasters and invasions. Whatever you're paid to simulate, eh?
You mean the Guild are just mercenaries?
We provide a service, and the people that you advocate for are mere tools. Does a hammer require legal representation?
7, 7, 7.
That means chocolate, you know? Juan's hungry after calibrating your entire network. If this is a mere disaster and recovery simulation, then why simulate an autistic child with a taste for chocolate?
Our simulations are, by necessity, exacting in detail. However, this particular model has demonstrated data corruption. He is a mere error.
How dare you! He's my son! If you're thinking of getting rid of him next time you reboot, then get rid of me too! How come I keep remembering how your simulations end when no one else does? Why do I remember the world ending over and over? Doesn't that make me a glitch too, doesn't it?
Do you see now?
This is life itself. What's the base code of the computers that runs this simulation? It's not base 2, is it? Not just zeros and ones, it's base 8. An entire universe built on 0 through 7. And the exact numbers that Juan communicates in.
1, 1, 1.
If this sim has hacked into our system, then there will be endless trouble.
Juan didn't hack into anything. He was born as a secondary processor in your computing environment. Your data flows through him the way oxygen flows through us, and he can't live without it any more than the environment can exist without him. And if you reboot and allow Juan to die, your entire system may remain down forever.
Doctor! Gaba's gone.
Captain Tobin stood before the surviving members of his troops within an empty parking lot.
Soldiers of the Horde! We've had no contact from B Company in several hours, so we must assume that they are down. However, we have everything we need to proceed to Objective Bravo. Make your way in pairs to Alpha Point. That should keep the sysadmins from pinning down your location. And...
Sir!
Someone yelled behind him. He turned to see Gabba running towards him.
What's the sitrep, Sergeant?
Sysadmin 2 may be about to perform a reboot, sir.
The troops began to murmur audibly.
That's enough! You have your orders. Move out!
The troops began to move out, but Gabba stayed where she was.
Sir, there's something else. The Doctor. He believes that the Sims are real.
Real? What are you talking about?
He means real as in alive, like you and me. If that's true...
Sergeant, you know as well as I do that our intel is sound. We will soon have a route open to every simulation on the network. And once we complete the mission, our people, for the first time in 2 centuries, will be safe.
But sir, if these beings are alive...
Everything else is irrelevant. Do I make myself clear, Sergeant?
Sir!
Then proceed to Alpha Point.
Gabba obeyed. Sysadmin 2 looked uneasy. He attempted to conceal his concern by saying,
As stimulating as these debates may be, the threat from the Horde remains. Due to the probabilistic nature of a simulation, we can't always determine their location unless they congregate in sufficiently large numbers.
Perhaps they're at Sterling Lake. Remember Elmer? The fisherman?
Yes.
He appeared in the bed and breakfast again after you left, but without his fishing pole. That could just be an anomaly, or...
A clue to the Horde's position.
Please don't interrupt.
My apologies.
It would appear that Elmer is yet another glitch. He'll be taken care of as well.
Maybe he's not the glitch. Maybe it's the location.
Do you mean it's not Sterling Lake, but the bed and breakfast itself?
Perhaps it's where we woke up after the world ended.
And where the Horde began their search? and where I found that trap door in the basement.
Juan began jumping up and down.
1, 1, 1.
It's the trapdoor, isn't it?
It must be. When I tried to open it, there was nothing, literally nothing, on the other side.
1, 1, 1.
Sysadmin 2? My records are vague about this trapdoor, so I shall consult the guild. Upgrades usually leave undeleted files behind from previous versions. Always, and usually undocumented. But in our simulations, we allow no such errors to...
0, 0, 0.
My son says you're wrong, sir. And he did fix your... I know.
Sysadmin 2 snapped. He appeared preoccupied as he said,
I'm looking through all previous versions, the documentation of which runs several trillion pages, so... Ah, yes.
Juan's right, isn't he?
He is. A backup data port from the original version that escaped our notice. Or perhaps it was kept hidden. Even hackers from Tronlo need a little help now and again. Are you suggesting that one of the guild would give help to those... Of course not.
The immediate question is this. Why would the Horde need access to the entire network?
Sabotage, surely.
They're too busy staying alive to indulge in revenge.
Escape to a hidden simulation? One that's been hidden, just like this data port?
Highly unlikely. But not impossible. Or perhaps they're after something other than Sanctuary. Such as? What if they never meant to stay here in the first place? What if the desire for asylum was a ruse? I think you give them far more credit than... Is it all right if I interrupt this time?
Oh, be my guest.
Sysadmin 2, what are you hiding that the Horde might be searching for? Should the Horde pose a major threat to the Guild, then the Guild will bring down upon them the full might of...
In other words, he's not going to tell us.
Whatever the Horde is up to, they're not likely to keep the safety of others in mind.
And whatever it is, they're doing it now.
Indeed. Sysadmin 2, you must take us to the bed and breakfast at once. All of us.
Even Juan?
Especially Juan. He may be the most important person in this universe. But don't let that go to your head.
Yes, you'd know all about remaining humble, wouldn't you?
Romana pointed out coolly, but not unkindly.
Is the teleportation unit ready to be activated, Private?
Tobin asked a soldier standing inside the bed and breakfast.
Yes, sir.
Stand by. It must be ready to go off just after the transformation device.
Roger that, sir.
Tobin jogged into the kitchen, where a corporal was standing by a large, ungainly, intricate device.
Corporal Sharp, is the transformation device standing by?
Operations minimal, and countdown set for 60 seconds.
Tobin held his breath for a moment, and then said,
Activated.
Sharp pressed a button, and they could instantly hear a low hum, which grew louder by the second.
Transformation device at the ready. And remember, everyone, allow nothing to interfere with this countdown. We only have one chance.
Tobin said as he left the kitchen and rejoined his troops.
Yes, sir!
They replied in unison. Then they heard an even louder sound as Sysadmin 2 appeared inside the bed and breakfast.
Incoming!
Tobin cried. The soldiers drew weapons and pointed them at Sysadmin 2. The doctor, Romana, Emilio, and Juan also appeared in the room.
Don't shoot! We're here to talk. If they shoot, their weapons will discharge in their hands. I want no violence. Captain Tobin, may we speak?
Hold your fire!
Tobin ordered. The soldiers lowered their weapons.
I know who your people are, and why you've acted so desperately. But you must know, these sims are less than an atom's width from being the same as you or I. I know you've found a hidden data port. I don't know what you plan to do with it, but if you tamper with the network that connects these simulations, you could cause another catastrophe that would bring them all down. And that's genocide. Isn't genocide what you're running from?
Tobin seemed unimpressed with the doctor's speech.
What's your point, Doctor? I can help you. I can take the Horde to the Kishi system. The embodiment of Gris were almost killed there by a Dalek fleet. He avoids it the way your people avoid ghosts.
We're not afraid of ghosts. We're not afraid of anything.
Who are you going to call?
The doctor muttered under his breath.
Perhaps I should attempt diplomatic relations.
Romana asked the doctor.
3.
Juan said.
Forgive me.
The doctor attempted to apologize.
Your diplomacy means nothing.
2.
Doctor, what does one mean? I don't know.
The doctor admitted grimly.
You've given us the time we needed. Thank you.
What?
1.
Doctor, something.
0.
It felt as if the world had dissolved beneath them. They were all falling faster and faster into darkness, even as Tobin and the Horde disappeared. The doctor tried to reach for Romana, but he could not see her, or anything else for that matter. All he could sense was a deep humming noise that filled his ears and mind. He tried to clasp his ears to block out the sound, but his hands passed through where his head should have been, then passed through each other. It was when time and space shattered that the doctor lost his consciousness, his mind, and his everything to utter darkness.
Masters, mistresses, the Doctor requires materials in order to maintain the TARDIS and ensure continued functionality. He similarly requires carbon-based comestibles to sustain his own biological functions and existence. Master would never say this, but he requires aid beyond that supplied by this unit in order to acquire these. To aid the Doctor in his various tasks and creations, this can be most effectively achieved via Patreon or Substack subscriptions, or through donations directly to PayPal. Or if you desire physical goods in return for your contributions, written accounts of my travels with the Doctor are also available on Amazon. Links are in the description below. Thank you, Masters, mistresses.